Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the round table. We are so excited that you are joining us tonight. As you are coming on, please feel free to jump in the comments and type in where you are coming from. We love to see where everybody is tuning in from. It's so fun to see the variety of different people that are tuning in from all over. So go ahead and put that in the comments. And as you're coming on, feel free to like and share. If you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you get our notifications for when we are live for different things. So welcome. Tonight, we are going to be diving into the topic of drug prevention and focusing on specifically youth. So I'm so excited for the guest that we are going to have on tonight. And I'm just going to read a little bit about her before we bring her on. So tonight joining us is Samantha Smith, and she actually lives in Bermuda. And so I'm just going to read her bio real quick. She has 20 years of experience working with children. And her experience started with working as a camp counselor in training. And then in April of 2006, she joined this organization called Pride as a part-time youth coordinator, assistance with responsibilities, working with another organization called Youth to Youth, working with programs and events. And then she became full-time, working to manage Pride youth clubs. And then in 2010, she received her prevention specialist certification. And in the following year, completed her certification as a trainer for life skills program. She now oversees the program team as program supervisor with 2 Pride program staff and 13 part-time field staff. She is the lead trainer for the life skills training program. And in November of 2017, Samantha successfully completed her certification to become Bermuda's first affiliate PATHS trainer, which is an international certification. And leadership and training are one of her passions. So without further ado, Samantha, if you could come on and join us, and we'll dive right into this topic. Hi, Samantha.
Hi, Raimi. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here,
All the way from Bermuda.
all the
I'm
way
glad
from
we can talk
beautiful Bermuda.
virtually. So yeah, that bio was a lot of interesting and amazing accomplishments. And so I just want to ask you, can you tell us a little bit about your story, how you got involved with youth in general? Was that something that you were always passionate about, or can you share a little bit about that?
Sure. So when I was, gosh, probably around 6 or so, my
Mm-hmm.
mom tells me that I was always like for the underdog. For instance,
Mm-hmm.
we would have grub day because we wear uniforms in Bermuda. So being able to wear play clothes was a treat. So we would have grub day, and the teacher would say something like, for all of you who work really hard and got 100% on your spelling test, then you can wear grub clothes on Friday. And
Wow.
my mom would tell me things like, you would always get 100%, but you would never wear the grub clothes because
Mm-hmm.
you would always be feeling sorry for these students. You're like, well, they worked really hard and they couldn't get 100%. And I
Mm-hmm.
didn't have to work hard. So I don't feel like I should be able to wear grub clothes. So I was always for the underdog. I always wanted to help people. So it started out as a nurse.
Mm.
Then I wanted to be like, I didn't know what it was. I just knew I had a doctor and he was named Dr. Peter. And I wanted to be like Dr. Peter. So that was a pediatrician.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I learned about, then I thought I wanted to be a nursery school teacher. And then I learned about helping people's minds out. So,
Mm.
and I wanted to help children who had problems with their minds to help them be better.
Mm.
And I kind of grew more towards the psychology side of things as I, went through school. And then I realized that necessarily psychological treatment wasn't what I wanted to do, but I knew that I definitely wanted to work with young people.
Mm.
And I got involved with what we call here Camp Hope, which was a Christian camp.
Mm.
And I got involved with after school care for preschoolers. And finally, um, I was working full time in an insurance company as a file clerk or what have you. And
Mm.
I hated it. Like near the end, I only lasted about 6 months. Near the end, I used to go to work with tears in my eyes. I was just like,
Oh wow.
I can't do it. I don't want to work with the papers. I don't want to do it. And so I said a prayer. I applied for a job at a summer camp. And
Mm.
I said, Lord, if I get this job, I'm going to take it as a sign that I can leave here and go pursue working with young people.
Wow.
So it wasn't long. That was June of 2006, I suppose. And then shortly thereafter, I had an interview at Pride Bermuda, and then I was hired.
Wow.
And that I haven't turned back. I've been here ever since, working with young people and just learning more and more about how to help young people with their issues.
Mhm.
So I guess it was a very intrinsic thing at the
Yeah,
beginning.
that's so awesome. I love that. Um, so I mean, clearly you've had a lot of experience and seen a whole bunch of things in this field of work. But what would you say are some of the leading causes of drug use in children or youth? And when we say youth, what age do you see these behaviors starting?
Sure.
Um, yeah.
So first of all, I just want to bring some clarity around substance abuse prevention, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I work in prevention, and a lot of times that people are not 100% sure, just so that I can frame the lens that we're looking at this from.
Yeah.
A lot of times when people hear substance abuse prevention, their minds automatically go to intervention and treatment.
Mm.
Then really what we're doing as preventionists is trying to find where the starting point may be and get ahead of it so that we equip young people with the skills and the tools that they need to prevent them from engaging in substance abuse, right?
Mm.
So with that frame, um, I do this activity in the life skills training called Why Kids Use and What Kids Need. And the answers are always the same. And it's not, we don't just look at use, but also like other high risk behaviors,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so some of the things that come up are um, across three domains, looking at their personal reasons, their social reasons, and then looking at environmental reasons. So things that come up across those three domains are things like boredom, curiosity, um, wanting to fit in, uh,
Mm.
just because at by the time they reach adolescence, that's one of the most important things, right? Having that sense of belonging. So if
Yeah.
they find themselves in groups of people that are actually experimenting, then they're more likely to experiment as well. So parents that use, or family members like siblings or parents
Mm-hmm.
that use, having role models that glorify that. So when you look at a lot of the music
Mm.
nowadays that's being glorified, Sometimes it's a lack of knowledge and understanding around the risk, the harmful impact that substances can have. Sometimes there is a low perception of harm. So they're thinking, okay, it's nothing wrong with it, or having that sense of invisibility, like, that's not going to happen to me. That happened to Johnny, but it's not going to happen to me. So
Yeah.
those are some of the reasons. According to this TED survey that was taken in 2011, they said that, and the TED survey is basically looking at people between 18 to 30 who are admitted into treatment. And according to this survey, about 10.2% of those admissions were 11 years old or younger. There's
Oh,
also another survey that was taken in Bermuda some time ago, and we saw that students were having access, gaining access as young as 7.5.
wow.
So that age had dropped when I started in 2006. We were looking at age of first use being like 11. Then I
Mm,
saw that drop to 9. Then we saw that drop to around 7. And I'm not saying that it was high numbers, but as far as I'm
mhm.
concerned, any child, 7, can you imagine your 7.5-year-old
Right.
like picking up alcohol or cigarette and and
Yeah.
just starting to experiment with something like that. So that's, let me say, we were looking at that being a possible start age, going as, because because the brain development, I would say, finishes between 25 and 26. So
Hmm.
that would be constituted as a young person.
Right. Wow. Um, so I know you mentioned that you the program that you work for tries to get ahead,
Mhm.
before kids even start experimenting with um drugs or what have you. So how, like, what are some high risk behaviors that you would like look for in somebody, or is it like an overall, like, arching education that's tied into the schools?
Yeah, so we have things called risk factors and protective factors, right? And
Mhm.
so when you're looking at high risk behaviors, a lot of that is coming from factors in their environment, especially if you're looking at younger children. So risk factors could be things like low neighborhood attachment, like they don't have any pride in their neighborhood, or don't feel akin to anything that's happening in their neighborhood, or you're looking at community disorganization.
Mm.
Um, these are some of the things that you're looking at. Laws and norms favorable to drug use. So when you look at a lot of the laws now that are changing in favor of marijuana and marijuana being legalized, that actually increases the risk factors.
Okay.
Uh, when you have poor family management or family history of antisocial behavior, if you have parents that are engaged in antisocial behavior, or siblings that are engaged in antisocial behavior,
Mhm.
also if you have parents that are using, right? So then that makes the drugs or substances easily available in the house. And when I say drugs, I'm talking about alcohol, tobacco, and other drugs as well.
Mhm.
Right? Other risk factors would be like poor academic performance or a lack of commitment to school.
Mm.
Then other risk factors include, underneath the parent individual, if the child themselves don't see anything wrong with drugs. And when I talked about uh, low perception of harm, like they don't think
Mhm.
that it would hurt them, or there's a risk associated with it. If you have students who are sensation seekers, like high risk, like risk takers or what have you, if they
Mhm.
have friends that use drugs, um, or if they have favorable attitudes towards antisocial behaviors as well. So if you come from a background where you sort your issues out with your fists, or using violence or other antisocial behaviors. All of those things increase the risk for students' likelihood to get involved in substance abuse and other high risk behaviors.
Yeah. So those are some things that you guys look out for, um, and then try to refer the children to the program.
So where we have moved for Pride specifically now, if we work in the schools at this point, right? So if we're working in the schools, then we would the teachers or youth serving adults who are around the children more often would be looking out for these things, and they have services in place, like your school counselor, or they have group sessions for certain things like that, just to give that child the added support. The programs that we run now are actually universal programs, meaning everybody can receive the programs. And our programs are focused more on increasing protective factors than decreasing risk factors at this stage. So where that means we're educating students on different skills to help them build, like how to make good decisions, how to have a positive self-esteem, how to interact with your peers and develop positive healthy relationships. So we're looking at it from that perspective, and that's really what got me as a preventionist, taking prevention from a really holistic point of view and looking at increasing strengths and building strengths.
Yeah, and I feel like it gives like it helps to build character too, right?
Exactly.
It's not so
Exactly.
much focused on, yes, the prevention aspect, but also like the building up of the child, right?
Yes. Yes. And that is prevention, right? Because
Right, right.
if you feel good about yourself, then why are you going to go and do something to harm yourself? If you have something to live for, if you
Hmm.
feel like you have purpose, why are you going to engage in something that's going to detract from that or impair your ability to achieve that? So it's
Right.
really doing our best to get that kind of information to our students as young as 5 years old. We have programs running that,
Wow.
help kids to be able to express how they're feeling, to helping them build a vocabulary around different feelings, what it looks like for them, and how to recognize it in others, and how to be a good friend. So we're
Hmm.
doing that as young as 5 now. And this
Wow.
the research shows that the more of these skills that students have, it reduces not just substance abuse, but a whole slew of high risk behaviors.
Wow, that's crazy. 5 years old. Oh my.
Yeah, and they love it. That's the PATHS program that you talked about in my bio. It's called
Mm.
Promoting Alternative Thinking Strategies. And it's in quite a few schools in the States. I know Chicago has a few programs across the schools there, and they do really well. It's amazing. They learn how to give compliments. They have puppets, and the puppets kind of have stories that guide them through these really mature topics, but
Mm.
breaking it down to
Yeah,
their
that's
level of
awesome.
development.
Yeah, I feel like it's a program that should be like seen more in the educational um spectrum, like implemented into schools.
Yes.
Um and I know you kind of touched on the subject of the parents, but say say there's a parent that's not using, like they don't have like any
Mhm.
drugs in the house or anything, but the child is involved in it. So can you talk like on how, what role would the parents play um in helping the child in that sense? um
Sure, sure. So, and we could take it from a few different angles with parents, right? So, if you're talking about it from a preventative perspective, you have each family has a set of values. And
mm,
we talk about things like if you have siblings in the house, we talk about how to treat people, or we show our children how to treat people by the way we treat people. We talk about the golden rule: do unto others as they do unto you. it's the same thing with high risk behaviors and substance abuse prevention. You want to start that conversation early and have it often. So you want your child to really understand what your value system is around substance abuse, what
Mm,
your expectations are around alcohol, tobacco, and other drugs. And just be able to share that. And it's what it does, it's open. Number one, it sets clear expectations, right? The child knows and understands where you're coming from. And number two, it begins to open up a dialogue between the parent and the child. And really without being overbearing, because sometimes I don't know if you have children, Rainy, but I have a 22-year-old and a 13-year-old. And I know sometimes as a parent, we kind of just bear down on our children with what we want them to do, why we want them to do it, how we want them to do it. But sometimes it's too much, and that can actually shut down the communication, right?
mm,
So it's about finding these gentle ways to open up channels for communication about hard topics. So if
mm,
you start talking about it early and start talking about it often, it sets an expectation, a clear expectation. That child knows where you're coming from, it knows what you believe about substances and what you want for them. But also, when they get into those difficult positions, because it's been a communication all this time, it
right,
opens up the line for them to come to you and ask you. And when they get in the hot water, they can come and talk to you about it comfortably,
right, right.
trusting you. And something that parents could look for once their students get into adolescence: changes.
Mm,
Whenever you see changes, you know that something's going on. It may not be substance abuse, it may be substance abuse.
mm-hmm,
But when you start to see changes, grades drop, or if you had a chatty child and now they're quiet, or if they're coming in from wherever and going straight to the room and closing the door, all of those things. If you see their friend group change, and
mm,
you know that some of the people in their new friend group might be involved with substances, then you know that there's a higher chance that your child may begin experimenting. And oh, it just left. Yeah, if you so yeah, basically just making sure that there's expectations are set. You're talking about it early and often, and look for changes. But the other thing that a good point that someone brought up at one time was that our silence also speaks volumes. So if you're not having that conversation, you're basically telling that child that you have no thoughts about it. You have
mm,
no views on it, and it leaves them to their own devices. So let's speak. Let's let our children know what we expect, how we feel about them, and what we want for them.
wow,
And
yeah.
finally, sorry,
Oh no, go.
what parents can do as well is make sure that they get their children involved in positive activities,
Mm,
activities with other young people, things that they like,
mm-hmm,
because things that they enjoy, or things that that they're gifted in. And when we're too busy doing something positive, we don't have time to engage in other
mm-hmm.
things.
Yeah, I love what you said about, you know, um, making sure that the communication is open, between your child, and starting that at a young age so they feel comfortable bringing these topics up to you,
Hmm.
and having a dialogue about it. And also the silence part. Like, I think that is so powerful. Like, just because you may not bring up a topic, but then what does your child think about it if you're not bringing it up?
Hmm.
Like, I think that's such a key thing to keep in mind. And our children are always observing and watching us, right? So,
Yes.
um, wow, yeah. And you talked a little bit about, you know, friends and peer pressure. And I think friends play a huge role, especially in adolescence, with peer pressure. So just looking out for those warning signs. which I feel like can be challenging for parents because in adolescence, you know, there's so many changes going on,
So
like
many things going
hormonal,
on.
like all stuff. So, you know,
It
really paying
is.
attention and I guess knowing your child, you know, and their behaviors and how they communicate and, you know, being observant in that as a parent.
Yeah.
Um, but are there any, I know you mentioned like warning signs, but like, does the program have any support for like parents going
Sure.
through?
So, at any good prevention program has parent components. And a lot of times, what these parent components do, number one, especially at the primary level, it would, our programs have take home activities where students
Mm,
can engage with their parents, where it helps to open up the dialogue. So,
okay.
um, it kind of talks about what they're learning. For instance, if they're learning about uh, how to calm themselves down, because that's something that's important, right? How to deal with their strong emotions without turning to alcohol, tobacco, and other drugs.
Mm-hmm.
So they might take a note home to their parents about, this is what I learned about calming down today. And with the 5 year olds, um, they have a system called Turtle. And so basically, what Turtle teaches them to do, they have to hug themselves, right, to symbolize getting into the shower, but it also keeps their hands busy so they're not hurting themselves or anybody else. To take
Mm,
a deep breath as many times as they need to calm down, and then to say the problem and how they feel. So we send that message, gets sent home to the parents so that the parents don't think, what is that child doing? When
right.
they're getting,
Like, what is
can you imagine being upset with your child about something and all of a sudden you see them cross the arms? That could almost be mistaken for being disrespectful, right?
right, right,
So,
right. No.
we encourage, the parents to understand what the children are learning and give them the space and time to implement it in the home. We also have parent programs. So we have a parent program with the PASS program and with the life skills program. The issue is, though, is getting parents to commit to the time frame. So what
Mm.
we would do is kind of go in and do assemblies. I don't know, do you have assemblies, parent teacher meetings?
Yeah.
We'll do parent teacher meetings, and share information that way as well,
Okay, cool.
or
Wow.
platforms like this.
Yeah, that's so awesome. So I know that there's no Pride program in the States, correct? It's only in Bermuda.
They used to have I'm not sure if Pride is still running. It's a Parent Resource Institute for Drug Education, is
Mm.
what they had. But it was also, they had like Dare. Did
Oh
you
yeah,
do
I went
Dare?
to there when I was a kid.
Right. So Dare would be similar to what we do. It's really just giving kids these skills, teaching them about the harmful impact of substances, but doing it in a way that's relevant for their stage of development. Youth to youth, of course. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
different programs like that. But the other thing about prevention, the beauty in it is that it's not just what you think. Like, it's not just, or it is exactly what you think it is, right? It's not just about teaching about the harmful impact of drugs and substances. That's important. But it's also things like big brothers and big sisters. It's also things like your music programs or your theater programs, your
Mm.
sports programs, all anything that engages a young person at their point of interest and their point of passion really gives that child something to live for, to look forward to get excited about, that doesn't have anything to do with alcohol, tobacco, and other drugs. So, like, one of the principal pillars for youth to youth was drug free fun.
Mm.
That's huge, right? And you know that you can go and party and dance and meet other young people and have a good time and do this all substance free. All of
Mm.
that is prevention.
Yeah. Well, and like you've mentioned before, the giving them the tools to work through, you know, if they're work through their emotions, whether they're sad
Yes.
or angry or, um, you know, not fitting in with their friends or whatever. Just, I feel like giving them those tools and those life skills, really. I mean, we,
Mm-hmm.
adults that don't have those life skills, right? So
Exactly.
I feel like it's, in developmental ages is super, super important. Um, and that can be used throughout your life.
Exactly.
Like, especially nowadays with, so much stress, so managing stress and all of that stuff is huge to learn.
It's so huge. I I can't even begin to talk about it when you think about everything that we are going through in this century. Like in two
Right.
years, the amount of pressure and stress that
Mm-hmm.
our young people and our adults, our families have endured. You talk about anxiety and
Right.
with domestic violence increasing and just the whole stress of trying to figure out how to do school from home, how to do work from home, have
Mm-hmm.
being on lockdown
Right.
and being able to have tools to help you work through those stressful scenarios.
Mm-hmm.
It's important. It's important.
Yeah. Where have you seen an increase in children needing this program um over the last few
Absolutely.
years?
Yeah, I know that in Bermuda, more and more students are reporting having, I don't have actual stats, but just in speaking with some of the counselors, more and more children are reporting having increased levels of anxiety.
Mm.
Specifically, that's one that I've heard more and more of. So learning how to work with that or being home all of that time and then figuring out how to re-enter into a crowd, a classroom of people, or being completely stressed out about whether or not they're going to catch COVID,
Mm.
or grades dropping and figuring out how am I going to graduate with everything that's taken place. So
Yeah.
definitely that's been very important. In fact, our program during COVID, the most talked about topic was managing stress.
I believe it.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, um we're going to wrap up in a few minutes, but did you have any last minute comments, advice for parents, children, anything
I
else?
feel like when talking to parents, I always just want to drive this point home. Start talking early and have the
Mm,
conversation often. You can introduce it young in very small ways that are appropriate in abstract ways. And as they get older and understand more, you can make it more specific. But please share your values and your expectations early and
mm,
often, particularly around substance abuse or any high risk behaviors. It is so important that we have those conversations and open up that those lines of communication because I this is just my personal belief that once you identify an issue or are able to talk about it, you can begin to take measures to address it if issues arise, or at least you
mm,
can know where your child is and what they're thinking.
right. And I feel like that's such a great point to also, you know, normalize, not normalize it, but like
Yes,
make it not
normalize having those difficult conversations
right, right,
because if not, it's like it's awkward, and when things are awkward, we don't want to address them. But if we make it normal to talk about the difficult things,
right,
then it makes it easier to approach the
definitely.
topics.
Yeah. So, real quick, like what, I mean, you said as early as 5, like starting.
So at 5 years old, we're not necessarily talking to them about drinking and smoking, but we but we are talking to them about, if you're having a bad day, it's okay, it's all right, here's how you can manage yourself, here's how you can manage those emotions.
Mm,
If you're having a bad day, oh, what you're feeling right now, that's sad, this is what sad looks like, this is what
mm,
angry looks like, Here's how to handle angry in an appropriate way.
Yeah.
This is not appropriate. This is appropriate. It's okay that you're angry. Everybody
Mm-hmm.
gets angry. So it's those simple conversations, and the skill that you're teaching them is it's really it's a big topic, right? Because how many adults are angry and they're throwing chairs or
Right.
getting
Punching
into
walls.
fights, right? So to teach them, go to your room for a minute, hug your pillow, take a few deep breaths, calm yourself down, and then let's talk about it when you're feeling a little bit better,
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
right?
that's huge. So, and those small little things, add up. And
Exactly.
the child is going to remember those as they get older, right?
Mm-hmm.
So awesome. Well, thank you so so much for all that valuable information. This was so great having you on. And just before we close, I just want to ask just a few quick rapid fire questions.
Okay.
They're just, they're just they'll be like five,
Okay.
so we can get to know you a little bit more. Um, okay, favorite color?
Red. I don't know.
Red.
I don't know. Black, purple, pink, green.
All
All
of
of them.
them. If you could eat anything for dinner, what would you have?
Anything with cheese.
Anything with cheese?
Yes.
That's awesome. I love cheese. Um, what was your favorite vacation?
Jamaica.
Mm, nice. And um, favorite movie?
That's a hard one. Right now, what's coming to my mind is the movie A Long Kiss Goodnight. I think one of the main characters was named Samantha.
Oh, really?
But also, I used to love Three Men and a Baby and Pretty Woman and Dirty
Mm-hmm.
Dancing, the original of was it
Oh,
Patrick Swayze in there?
yeah.
Oh, I used to have a big crush on Patrick Swayze.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing. I just like to do that at the end. It's fun. But I hope everybody that was watching thought that this was informative, and there are some drug prevention programs in the U.S. Like Samantha mentioned, Youth to Youth International is one that's in the States. So if that's something that you would want to look into. And yeah, thank you so much for joining, Samantha.
Thank you for having me. I enjoyed it.
Awesome. So we will be back in 2 weeks with another topic on the roundtable. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you're watching on YouTube, or if you're watching on Facebook. Don't forget to like our Facebook page so you can follow us and know when we're live next. We will see you next time at the roundtable. Good night.